Hi, I'm Ben Ferguson, and welcome to your Amac Weekly News. First up, much to the shock of the mainstream media and liberals, states are actually waking up and removing mandates, even some liberal states. I'll have those big details for you in just a second. Also, U.S. truckers are joining in the fight against vaccine mandates. And then, when they tried to organize, they got banned from Facebook right away. Why? I'll explain it. And finally, a viral video of children being told in the classroom that they're no longer going to have to wear their masks have gone viral. Rebecca Weber, the CEO of Amac, will join us to talk about that. Quick reminder, if you haven't shared this video, make sure you share it on social media so many more conservatives can find this program. Your Amac Weekly News starts right now. After 2 years of insanity and mandates, we are finally seeing some mandates disappear across the nation, even in liberal states, and the media cannot comprehend what they're seeing. Just take a look at CNN's medical analyst responding to the question of whether or not mandates should continue in this country.
Why would we not mandate a safe and effective vaccine that prevents a disease that has killed 1,000 kids in the last 2 years? Why would we not mandate that? Right? We mandated for, measles, mumps, rubella, polio, for about 8 other diseases. And look, if we all want to move to a point where kids are, free to enjoy school without masks, without being encumbered like that, why wouldn't we emphasize vaccines and mandate that all kids have vaccines the same way we do it for all these other childhood diseases? It just makes common sense. The only reason not to do that is that it's become so politicized.
Now, the media aren't the only ones that can't handle actually seeing the faces of children. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki continued to push this absolute lie about masking kids being based in science. Take a look.
Guidance is very clear, which is that we recommend masking in schools. That is the recommendation from the CDC. It is also true that at some point when the science and the data warrants, of course, our hope is that that's no longer the recommendation, and they are continually assessing that. But the guidance is very clear. It is also true that it has always been up to local school districts to make determinations about how to implement these policies.
Despite the claim that mask mandates are a response to the, quote, science, even liberal states have realized that this cannot continue. Just this week, it was announced that New York State governor will end the controversial mask mandate. You also have Democratic New Jersey Governor Murphy, who tried to claim that mask mandates in schools were the right thing without being able to cite any evidence. Take a look.
Yeah, but have you seen data that definitively proves that these mask mandates have worked? I mean, the numbers you just presented are impressive, but are they different from the numbers in states where they didn't have mask mandates?
Yeah, again, I know Jersey, Jake, the best, but I'm highly confident, and I'm sure our health officials could say it definitively. There's no question they've worked. There's no question getting vaccinated, getting boosted, and wearing masks indoors have all been positive public health steps compared to the absence of any of those things in the alternative.
The wave of Democrat-controlled states suddenly changing direction comes as a shock to many. But you have to realize that November midterms are just around the corner. Even liberals now know that Americans are sick and tired of the government controlling every aspect of their lives. Liberal politicians are now terrified of what is going to happen in the midterms after seeing polling data. They know that if conservatives have sweeping success in the midterm elections, they can't keep their control over the American people. This is clearly a tactic. How do I know that? The Biden administration actually launched investigations into Republican-led states in August of 2021 over their school mask policies. Where are the investigations into the blue states? There aren't any, because the White House knows that the only way to have any success in the midterms is to look like you are giving people their freedoms back. This is just another Democratic ploy to deceive the American people. One of the biggest stories of the year was all started when hundreds of Canadian truck drivers began a convoy to stand up for their own rights against a vaccine mandate for people that are isolated day in and day out in a cab driving down the roads. News of this convoy spread internationally, and now American truck drivers are joining the fight. It's not without consequences, though. The media is treating these truck drivers in Canada now like they're some sort of anarchists or vigilante group intended to create havoc and actually hurt people. Just take a look at how they're covering them.
Sedition, insurrection, a threat to democracy.
This city is under siege. They are now calling it an occupation.
Alarming situation there in Ottawa.
The police chief is calling it a nationwide insurrection driven by madness.
This is kind of our insurrection by air horn moment. I think it's part of the globalization of Trumpism.
Canadians know where I stand.
There hasn't been as much violence as some had perhaps projected, but that does not necessarily mean that it has been peaceful.
Reports of severe vandalism and criminal behavior.
Streets are clogged. The honking is incessant and deafening.
This pandemic has sucked for all Canadians.
Residents that I have spoken to who say they feel terrorized, intimidated. Residents say they feel like hostages. Residents in that area say that they are being held hostage, that this freedom convoy, as they call it, has essentially imposed a lockdown on them.
Some protesters harassed a soup kitchen.
These anti-vaxxers actually took food from the mouths of the homeless.
Hungry, yeah.
Because they're so put upon.
There have not been any violent outbursts. However, horns have been honking for 12 to 21 hours a night.
If you've ever wondered what propaganda looks like, this is it. You heard what they said correctly. The mainstream media is now calling truckers who just want their freedoms back insurrectionists and a threat to democracy. In reality, these truck drivers are heroes just coming together to say no to the mandates that they be vaccinated. On a side note, 90% of all truck drivers in Canada are actually vaccinated. So the idea that all these people are anti-vax is absurd. They're anti-taking away their freedoms. Their own Prime Minister, Trudeau, slammed their actions in fighting for their freedoms by saying this.
The small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views that they're expressing do not represent the views of Canadians who have been there for each other, who know that following the science and stepping up to protect each other is the best way to continue to ensure our freedoms, our rights, our values as a country.
Now, if you really want to know who's anti-freedom, anti-democracy, it's actually Trudeau and Joe Biden, who have actually colluded with one another to make sure that they can do what they're trying, and that is to mandate that truck drivers be vaccinated in order to cross from the U.S. into Canada and vice versa. Yes, this is absurd. These truck drivers spend the majority of their time in a closed box with little to no contact with anyone. Also, these individuals are responsible for keeping our economy alive, especially with our supply chain issues and shortage of truck drivers that both men have talked about. Now, what makes this even more ridiculous is the fact that Joe Biden placed a mandate on our northern border while he also allows for a completely open southern border and no testing of illegal immigrants that come across the border if they even have COVID-19 or a new variant. Now, the Canadian truck drivers also had a GoFundMe page where they raised millions and millions of dollars to support their cause. Guess what happened? Yeah, GoFundMe, instead of acting as a, quote, neutral third-party group, decided to go woke because of pressure from the two administrations. The same company that allowed for funding of the so-called Chaz or CHOP occupation in Seattle, you know, where they set up a new country, they decided that funding the truck drivers was somehow wrong. Just listen to what Senator Ted Cruz had to say about GoFundMe and what they did.
You look at what GoFundMe did. People gave $10 million to support the Freedom Convoy because they were so proud of the courage of these truck drivers. And the thieves in Silicon Valley decided, we don't like your politics, so A, we're going to take your money, and then B, we're going to give it to people we like. Listen, if anyone else did that, that is called theft.
Ted Cruz is absolutely right. GoFundMe tried to steal the money given to the truck drivers and then force them to hand it out to organizations that they approve of. Thankfully, GoFundMe got busted. And despite the media's obsession with calling these truck drivers terrorists, the movement in favor of spreading freedom is spreading. And now Alaskan truck drivers are joining those in Canada to show their support. Truck drivers in D.C. are even starting their own convoy. Clearly, big tech cannot handle anyone wanting freedom, which is why Facebook shut down the page created in support of the American truck drivers organizing. I wish I was kidding. Facebook actually did this after GoFundMe was caught stealing money from the Canadian truck drivers, and they wanted to squash all of this freedom by saying, you can't have a page on Facebook because somehow you might be a domestic terrorist. At the end of the day, we need to support these truck drivers because they are heroes. And we need to make sure that we support the American truck drivers as they try to organize. There's a big story that is happening this week that is affecting us in this country, but really around the world. And I want to show you an incredible video of students being told in Israel that they no longer have to wear masks while in school. This after being masked for 2+ years. And then I'm going to get the reaction of Amac's CEO, Rebecca Weber. But first, I want you to look at this video. This is what freedom looks like when it's given back to the students.
אני רוצה להודיע לכם שבהחלטת הממשלה הוחלט שמהיום לא צריך מסכות גם בכיתות.
Joining me now to talk about this is our very own Rebecca Weber. And Rebecca, I watch this video. You get that lump in your throat. You almost want to cry because it's so genuine and authentic. And it also, I think, shows you what we have done to our children around the world with these mask mandates. We now know they got them wrong. The CDC has admitted they got it wrong on masks. And we're seeing people get rid of these mask mandates that clearly just weren't working yet. Dr. Fauci is still refusing to say he got it wrong.
You know, Ben, I just saw that video, and it really brings tears to my eyes because these children, they don't understand why they get that they're happy because they don't have to wear a mask, but the whole idea is that they've been told what they had to do when all along we've known that how well do these masks really work, and are these children really the ones that are at greatest risk of contracting COVID? It's beautiful to see the innocence in those children, the cheers, the laughter, the happiness, the waving of the masks, and that's what we need to remember. Joe Biden ought to watch that video, Ben. He ought to understand that he's got to get us past the point that we're at. He promised us that he was going to beat back or beat the pandemic, and so far he's been failing America in many ways.
You know, the mental side of this, I'm talking about mental health side of this, is something that we are now starting to see some raw data on. We are seeing now that single people who are older have actually been dying at a younger age, they think, because of being heartbroken and isolated and becoming lonely. We are seeing data now that's looking like it's going to be very clear that the biggest killer of children during COVID-19 lockdowns was not COVID, but suicide. The world needs to look at this and answer for this. And yet you see this administration, you see Trudeau and what's happening in Canada right now, you see Fauci, they are refusing to admit that they got it wrong and quickly change. And it's an issue of now, I think, credibility. How do we ever trust our public health officials after this ever again on the next issue that we may face as a country? Because it's clear that you can't trust them now on this issue.
Yeah, and believe it or not, there's one American who's actually managed to plummet even faster in the polls than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and that is Fauci, Dr. Fauci. I mean, he has been so unpopular, and I think that he has succeeded in being so unpopular is because he's become part of the Washington, D.C. ruling class. I mean, really, he is what I call a serial liar because He can't be trusted. He has flip-flopped time and time again with whether or not masks actually work. And he brushes off really legitimate concerns and legitimate concerns of American people that are asking real questions. And then he attacks us and says that we're attacking science. And this is a guy, Ben, which I think is so funny. He's got like a shrine in his house with pictures of him. I have never seen such a thing. But you've got to wonder, does he care about his own image more than the American people?
It's narcissism at a whole nother level. And I've been saying this now, almost moving on from Fauci for weeks, which is, look, I know he's a narcissist. I know that he's more polarizing than Donald Trump ever was. And Donald Trump is a politician. By default, politicians are going to be polarizing. You're either a conservative or a liberal, Republican, Democrat. You're either a tyrant or in favor of freedom. You're going to be polarizing. But when you are a public health expert, you are not supposed to be polarizing.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to be someone that when you come on TV, people immediately look at you and they say, I hate you. I can't stand you. I can't stand that guy or that lady or whoever it may be. And the part that I think now is a bigger issue for me is forget Fauci. The President of the United States of America and the White House should understand that this man has lost his effectiveness to lead on any health issue in America moving forward. And once you know that, once you see these poll numbers about Dr. Fauci and the fact that the American people overwhelmingly do not trust him, that's when it's time for you to fire him and move on and try to find someone that the American people do trust. Because when it comes to public health, and there will be another public health crisis, you have to know that the majority of the American people look at this person as a non-polarizing figure that is there to help, not to dictate and be a tyrant.
That's right. And people need to remember, and this is the truth, in March of 2020, Anthony Fauci said, there's no real reason to be walking around with a mask. Wearing a mask, and I'm going to quote this, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better. It could block some droplets, but it will not provide the perfect protection that people think it is. So when we remember what he said to us then, and we see what he's saying to us now and flip-flopping, you got to wonder, who is he working for and where are his priorities? This is good that we're talking about it.
I said this earlier in the show, and I'll say it again. Just watch what the media is trying to do to these people in Canada right now. They're trying to turn them into racists. They're trying to turn them into people that support Hitler. They're trying to turn them into the worst people in the world because they're standing up for freedom. Don't take the bait. We are going to have to continue to fight because clearly these individuals, whether it's Biden or Trudeau, are not willing to give up the power they grabbed over the last 2 years, and we're going to have to fight back hard and be smart about it to get our freedoms back. Rebecca, as always, I appreciate you coming on Amac Weekly News. It's really fun to talk to you each and every week, and we'll see you back here next week.
Thank you, Ben.
That's it for this edition of your AMAC Weekly News. A quick reminder, if you have never joined AMAC, do it right now. We need you more than ever in the fight. If you have not renewed your membership, make sure you do it. We are now well over 2 million strong, and we are making a difference, not just in Washington, but at the state level as well. You also get the AMAC magazine, you get AMAC Weekly News, and incredible member benefits that help so many members. So always check the website and see what is new. So if you haven't joined or renewed, or you haven't told your friends about AMAC, make sure you do it. I'm Ben Ferguson, and I'll see you back next week for our next episode.